to the people of this land today. The Egyptians had painted the Nubians as mere slaves. What Mahmoud wants to show me is that the story isn't so simple. It's just astoundingly hot today. Apparently it's above 50 degrees, and I've never experienced it before, but it gets above 50 in this environment, and it's no longer just hot from the sun. It just feels like it's coming at you from every direction. The Egyptians only ruled Nubia for just a few centuries. And there's hard evidence that the Nubians were able to get their own back on their conquerors. But surrounded by all these massive Egyptian remains, I find that hard to believe. Mahmoud says that if I had any lingering doubt that the Nubians turned the tables on the Egyptians, that would be completely extinguished by having a look at what's in here. It's a temple, apparently built by a Nubian ruler called Taharqa in around 700 BC.
You can see here depiction of the holy mountain, Jabal Barqa, with the pinnacle on the shape of cobra with the sun disk.
So that is where we actually sat, just under at the bottom of that.
And that's exactly where we are now, here just beneath the pinnacle itself, here inside the mountain. And we have here Amun, depiction of Amun.
Actually inside?
Inside the mountain, dueling.
In here?
Yes. And in front of it we have the Taharqa, giving offering to Amun.
So Taharqa representing the people here?
Yes.
But what these images show is that Taharqa wasn't just a ruler of Nubia, he was also a pharaoh of Egypt. The conquered had become the conquerors. He was one of a whole dynasty of Nubian pharaohs, which ruled over the entire Nile Valley under the auspices of Amun.
And Taharqa wearing the crown with two cobras, which means that he is the king of the two lands.
Wow, astonishing.
Yeah.
Because usually these things are so ambiguous and that you have to make a bit of a leap of faith with history or archaeology. But this is absolutely categorical. And suddenly I'm seeing that snake again. These are black pharaohs, Nubians, part of that lost kingdom of Nubia. But they didn't just rule over Nubia, they also ruled over Egypt as one continuous kingdom. These hieroglyphs show how Taharqa celebrated his joint Nubian-Egyptian kingdom in the sanctuary of this temple. On the one side, he depicted the Nubian gods,
on the other wall here,
with the Egyptian deities on the other. This black African civilization held sway from the Upper Nile all the way to the Lebanon for over a century. These statues, discovered only a few years ago, give us a portrait of the Nubian pharaohs in all of their self-confidence. These people ruled the whole area from here down in the Nubian territory right the way up into Egypt. And you can tell that by looking at their headdress. These two snakes, one for Nubia, one for Egypt. And you can tell how threatening they were to the Egyptians because they've all at some point had their heads knocked off. Just look at them. And though they were unable to keep their hold on Egypt, the Nubian kingdom survived for centuries afterwards. But now they had acquired some Egyptian habits. From this time onward, Nubian rulers would be buried in pyramids like the pharaohs of old. There are more pyramids in Sudan than in Egypt. But this wasn't simple imitation. It had been centuries since Egyptian rulers used pyramids, and these pyramids are of a very different shape. This was the Nubians celebrating their own glory. But the Nubians had another greater enemy than the Egyptians: the environment. At the time of Taharqa, around 700 BC, the archaeological records show that the desert was approaching ever closer, and Kerma itself had lost its grazing land. The pressure of the desert meant that the heartland of the Nubian kingdom now moved further south, another 350 miles along the Nile, around a place called Meroe. Today, the desert here is littered with the remains of pyramids and temples. The society that built them flourished between 700 BC and 400 AD. The rebirth of the Nubian kingdom at Meroe, still green and lush back then, is marked by countless palaces and temples. And although the Egyptians had left their mark on the Nubian culture, there's evidence here also of more ancient Nubian beliefs. I can see the Egyptian influence in the shape of this temple. But the relief sculpture on the walls expressed a decidedly un-Egyptian worldview. By 200 BC, the Egyptian god Horus has been demoted to the back of the line.
So this is in the line of seniority?
Exactly.
Even the great Amun of Jebel Barkal is playing second fiddle to the completely non-Egyptian war god Apedemak. He's more senior, shown presenting the sign of kingship to the Nubian ruler. And there's another way the Nubians held on to their traditions from before. Mahmud has brought me to one of the most spectacular sights in Sudan, the royal cemetery itself, where the Nubian kings of this period were buried in their distinctive pyramids. There's evidence of a return to their traditional way of life, where one thing was of the utmost importance.
You can see this line of cattle, two lines, one of on the top, one of the bottom of the wall.
So there's a whole row of cattle,
Yes.
just going from right to left.
And you can see in the iconography itself the scale of the people and the scale of the cows. So they're more concentrating on the cows.
So the thing that they value is obviously cattle.
Exactly.
And the whole of their social world can be translated into value through cattle.
And connected also with cattle as a major part in this life. I think that.
Wow, amazing. So, in a sense, there does seem to be a link between kingship and cattle. Something quite fundamental.
Probably yes, because as far as we saw now in here at Meroe and at Kerma, the connection with cattle, and they keep representing cattle in their iconography here in all the thing connected with life and life after death.
700 years after they were subjected to Egyptian domination, the Nubians of Meroe were still a distinct and African culture, a heritage that still connects them to African cultures today. It's time to leave the ruins and head to the inhabited part of Meroe.
We're up to the royal city of Meroe, and they've supplied some fantastic transport.
Modern Meroe is where Mahmud carries out his main research.